Day, guys, and welcome to another episode of the One Micronesia Podcast. And in this episode, it's such an awesome one. I mean, every episode I do it with such awesome and amazing individuals, organizations who are just out there doing amazing things. And with me today, I have him back. I did a podcast with them, and we did the Unity series of podcasts. But I'm bringing it back because we talked about some of the things that they did, but we didn't really get into it because of the time. But now we're back with them. I'm here with the wonderful organization. It's Humanities Guahan. And I have here with me Kimberly, Nadine, and Elfrey. Guys, thank you so much. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Sure. Thanks for having us.
Wonderful to be here.
So I guess we'll go ahead and jump into it. Our podcast today. I think Nadine sent me an email, and I was just like, "Wow, we have to talk about this," you know. And it's a series of conversations that you guys are going to be doing over the next couple of days, the next couple of weeks. So let's go ahead and get into it. So let's talk about it. How did it all come about? This race, ethnicity in the Pacific community conversation series.
Okay, well, I think I'm here to give the background. Is that right, ladies?
Yes.
I just wanted to say that Elfrey Koshiba, she is the vice chairwoman of the Humanities Guahan board. So we're so thrilled that we have a board member who's also one of our trained facilitators. And she's, facilitating the current conversation with Nadine. And Nadine, as you know, is our program coordinator. So she coordinates this program, our community conversations, and also our Mother Read program, and does a whole lot more too. So just to give you a little context. So actually the whole community conversation program actually began back in 2009. And I want to just first explain kind of what what we mean by conversations, because there are a lot of conversations these days. There's critical conversations. There's many different conversations you see. So with Humanities Guahan conversations, we use a civic reflection model. This is basically humanities-based discussion. And it entails really providing a safe or hospitable place for participants, which are members of our community, who can really come together, who have very diverse opinions, voices, perspectives, and really discuss challenging, difficult, or contentious issues on our island. And then as well as larger issues around, it could be many things: identity, culture, power, a lot of different really important civic matters. And then the second thing about our conversations is that we center and ground them in literature, which is why they're humanities-based. So a conversation can begin with an essay, a poem, a chant, and even film, which is, a visual form of literature that is relevant to the topic at hand, like race and ethnicity, etc. And then we also have what we do. We have trained facilitators, such as Elfrey and Nadine and myself, who have gone through a 3-day intensive training on how to use the civic reflection model in our conversations. So it's a quite different approach, and it's really a series of conversations. You pointed out we do one a week for 6 weeks, and then we also even have large conversations events where we'll bring maybe 80 to 100 people together. And we'll actually have an in-person presentation, whether it's a reading of poetry or it's a chant or a dance. And then we break up into smaller groups and then have these same discussions around what was performed or presented. So we started with the Project 8000, How Will It Change Our Lives? Community Conversations on the U.S. Military Buildup in Guam back in 2009. And that really was focused on, the really challenging issue of what the military buildup in Guam would mean to our community, both perhaps negative and positive, right? And so we actually conducted 142 conversations through this project, or series of conversations. And then we also produced a collection, it's called a Pacific Collection, Readings for Civic Reflection. It was a publication that the Humanities Council did as well. And then we actually relaunched it in 2011 with our Micronesian Question project, which is with Micronesian questions, issues of migration, identity, and belonging in Guam. And here we featured the late Pacific Micronesian scholar and poet, Dr. Teresia Tewa, as well as her then student, Dr. Emily Turkeeling, who is a Pohnpeian Pacific scholar and poet as well. And we had a large conversation event that focused on the poetry of Teresia as well as Emily relevant to the experiences of Micronesians in Guam and through other places where other migrant communities throughout the Pacific and in the US. And then most recently, in 2016, 2017, we started our kind of race and ethnicity conversations series through an NEH initiative on the legacy of race and ethnicity in the US. And we did this through, it was called Speaking to Water and Creating Communities, Civic Reflection for Pacific Islanders in Guam. And here we used a whole set of videos that HG, Humanities Guahan, had produced and curated for a separate project that was associated with the exhibition we did in 2017, Hita Ihanam. And this really is the collection of chants, stories, poetry, personal narratives that we videoed and curated of Pacific Islanders, largely Micronesian voices and experiences around water and its importance to our island communities. And so that's where we have today. We've kind of continued with that project. We've expanded it through Nadine's hard work. And that's where we came today to race and ethnicity in the Pacific.
Awesome.
A long history of conversations by Humanities Guahan.
But it's good. People actually get to know, the different programs you guys got going on and how far back, it goes, and the amazing job that you guys have been doing. So let's get to it. So what can people expect, or what are the goals? And I know when in the email that Nadine sent, there were a set of goals that you guys wanted to kind of emphasize on to having to reach the people with.
So it's always really good about having that model to really readily accessible for us to use in a particular project like the ones Kim's have shared over the years. And so a lot of this are things that kind of come up through the media or things that are going on in our community and kind of trying to respond, but then through the power of the humanities, connect with people in that response or come together to respond to one another and listen and share stories with one another in response to like an issue or multiple issues. And so this is actually our second virtual community conversation series, because the first one kind of centered around what was happening nationally with the Black Lives Movement, Black Lives Matter movement, and also the deaths of African Americans in the U.S. Most notably with the ones in just recent year, and kind of responding to what do we want our society to look like and what does justice mean for us, And so we shifted to this online platform because we weren't able to meet in person because we were having it previously before the pandemic. We were in the middle of one at the Department of Youth Affairs. We were working with Manetlu, the Micronesian Resource Center, some UOG interns, social work students from UOG. We were planning one with GCC. So, there's many ways that we're trying to connect with different parts of the community. So we thought we shouldn't stop trying to tell stories and shouldn't try to learn from our stories. So we, like many other state humanities council, we've all shifted online and we're able to keep kind of the essence of these conversations where we're telling stories, right? We are missing one of the most key component, which is sharing of food to kind of stimulate this, stimulate our conversation or help along. But for this particular one, kind of because of what we're going through with the pandemic, and then also all the other things that impact in our communities, this is where we wanted to center our conversation around race, because it's just so embedded in the issues we see, or are so deeply rooted in these issues that we face. But then also health, because that's what everyone will be talking about or responding to, or be responding because of. So the health, and then society as a whole. What are we ultimately trying to find, and what are we ultimately trying to reach as a together collaboratively. And like Kim shared, this is where it's really good to have different perspectives, because while we will have differing opinions and assumptions and beliefs, we really believe that we have this fundamental value of living together in a shared community. And so this really helps facilitate that, especially with our trained facilitators.
That's awesome. And you did mention that a little bit of this being going into the second one. You guys had a first one, so I want to go back a little bit and do a recap. So if people who are watching the podcast right now, maybe they missed out on the first one, but let's go back and kind of give them what went down, what happened, or what were what was the conversation like in the first one you guys had?
Yeah, so we use a lot of our videos from this speaking to water video project, just because we needed something to kind of connect or ground all the people that will be coming on. And we most notably reached out to Pacific Islanders, or those that call the Pacific Islands their home. And interestingly enough, for the first session, because it was virtual, our audience also kind of uh, changed, because we had some Pacific Islanders living abroad in the mainland, and some of the comments that I really remember through participating, they really felt that they had this split space that they can really have these discussions about identity and culture and struggles and all of that, with people that can relate to, but then can also provide some, sounding board to these issues that they face, and we kind of have a different experience because they live abroad. But then also the ways that issues nationally have, made their way or impact here in Guam, and then just locally too. But it's just there's so much to try to recap or talk about the series. It's so all I know is every session is so interesting. Every session, as much as I've used like the same videos or same text, poems, or whatever, they're just, because there's different people coming through every session, you just hear just hear the videos or texts or stories just are always unique and different, and always a learning experience, at least for me with facilitating. And it just reminds me why we just continuously need these kinds of exchange and dialogue with people, because there's all this there's just so much to learn from, and to listen to, and to share.
I think one of the beautiful thing that's happening as well, and what you guys are continuing to do, is the fact that the conversation needs to happen, because right now, especially where we're at right now in 2020 with COVID-19, with all the different things, with the new norm, with all our different cultures here on one island or with the different islands, we need to talk about these things. And I think when you guys start a conversation, maybe not to hit it on the spot, but at least keep the conversation going. What I'm trying to get to is with this new norm, with especially our here on the islands, we have cultures, we have different things to do. And then when COVID-19 hit, the restrictions came about, and then now we can't do social gatherings, and that's a big thing here on the island. Social gathering, we live with family. We are what we are because of family, and family gatherings are a big part of our lives here on the islands. And with social gatherings and everything, people still see it as something that's restricting them from being loved or going to see out their families, while the government are saying no, you have to stay within your houses, no social gatherings, no parties, no this. So I think with conversations like this, we kind of open people's minds on why these things are supposed to be followed, why these guidelines are supposed to be followed. So maybe I'm not hitting the spot with your conversation, but I think when you guys have a talk like this, it also opens other questions and answers. So I think it's a beautiful thing you guys got going on.
Thank you. I mean, because we are now experiencing this together, this pandemic, that's something that already like makes us all in having common, right? And so then it begs us to ask, okay, what are we doing now that we're in this pandemic? What are you doing? What has worked for you? What has helped you? Maybe I could do that. And I feel like it also really reminds us of how the different things that we thought we had, you know, culturally or traditionally, that we have in common. So it's just, I feel like it reminds us again, because we're so pre-COVID, we're so busy and inundated with things that we had going on. And so this kind of slowing down also really forces us to reflect on things that we have and things that we share in common or forget that we have in common, and use these common grounds to build better relationship or strengthen that sense of community with one another and for one another. So most definitely, that's a topic in this conversation. That's a topic in my family literacy program that I do, asking kids what are they doing in these times, helping families also think of creative ways or and attend our digital their virtual programs to build and strengthen the family bond. So it's all centered around already what we value, which is being family oriented, right? And while we can't do it in person, this is one way to keep that social connection with one another. But then also through the power of the humanities, which is just what illuminate who we are and who we were and where we want to go with one another.
That's awesome. That's a beautiful. Elfrey, I want to get you on here and get your take on.
I'm being quiet because normally I talk way too much.
No, we need it. That's why it's a podcast. It's the beautiful thing about a podcast. Right. We can go on and on.
We're asking what our goals are. One of them is the importance of bringing different people together, people who don't necessarily think alike, people from all sectors of our community, government leaders, regular people like us, and taking off our different hats and just really having a valuable conversation about issues in our community. And you did raise a very good point about community, us getting together, how we are social beings, and most especially as Pacific Islanders, we are our village, we are our family, and our extended family is the place where everything happens. So it's been difficult, and using the civic reflection model and our community conversations, it kind of seems very not Pacific Island. Oh, let's take a piece of literature and read it, and take a poem and look at it and use it, but it really is a wonderful way for these different people, when they're together, to talk about things that are not necessarily easy to talk about, and to really reflect on a different level, So we've really found value. I mean, Kim just shared how many conversations did we have on our very first project. Just that many conversations shows that it's a model that works and it's valuable to our people and to our community.
I mean, yeah,
So that's one.
I like that. Thank you. So we talked about some of the goals. So now looking into the first virtual convo was a success. Amazing. You guys got a lot of feedback. Before I move on to the next one, I wanted to know, were there some concerns that people brought up during the first conversation?
Something I always notice in these, at least since taking on this conversation project, people kind of come in and like, what are we getting ourselves into? What is this about? And that's understandable because of the way we're so used to just coming to a forum and listen to the experts talk about an issue and then going away and then just trying to think about it. So this is where we kind of, this is where it's the spaces for people to interpret the text that we use or the videos, but then also bring out some of the concerns or challenges that they may have in the context of the video or whatever literature that we use. So with this recent one that we had, we purposely used the video Sailing Funny Gods and Guahan, because it really does support this idea that we can come together and work together on a common goal. And that was Master Navigator Cesario Serralo's message in, his father's message, Papa Mau Piailuk. And so people can come in with their, um, you know, they could be hesitant because they want, we're always so concerned about what we're going to say, and we feel that we might not be able to contribute. Um, that's what I want to say is what was a concern. But after a while, you know that the ones who were shy in the first maybe 30 minutes were just like talking away because they felt very comfortable that this was not a place to, be supposed experts, but just as a person who really feels for this topic or this value that we're talking about, we're able to, get those responses from them and also inspire other people to share. And so I can see how people becoming vulnerable, because the idea is to kind of lower down your defenses, lower down things that those barriers that we put up or is in place in our society. And these spaces that we facilitate really tries to encourage people to want to share things that are vulnerable to them or might make them look vulnerable. And then others are inspired by that act, and then they reciprocate. And then when we have that exchange and we continue to have that on a larger scale, imagine what it really can do as a society in like addressing the larger issues and all the other complicated um, ways that it affects different parts of the island or parts of the world even.
We're gonna kind of move on here. The Zoom just gave me notifications. Oh man, Zoom. So I have about 9 minutes left on this recording. So I'm gonna move on to people who are watching right now. They want to get in the conversation. Let's talk about the next one. What's it about, and then how can they get involved?
So we have this ongoing series on a Saturday with Elfrey and I. And if there are people who are so interested to join, you can like contact me directly. You can find my email on our website at www.humanitiesguahan.org. And we're also very open to working with organizations, agencies, or associations that kind of want to bring this into their with their workforce or their employees or members, to kind of have this this model of a conversation with one another on like issues that we can help by selecting series of text or videos or what have not to help have conversations with them. So right now if someone is really interested, they could just email me directly or visit our website and sign up on our mailing list so that they can get notifications for our next series. Because we're hoping to have multiple series starting 2021. And we're hoping to train more people to be facilitators. The more facilitators we have, the more we can conduct more community conversations throughout the island. And because of like how we have more accessibility because of Zoom and we're getting more comfortable with Zoom, we can definitely have a set series that invite people abroad or even in the region of Micronesia to actually be talking with us here in Guam and abroad.
That's awesome. Okay, so guys, thank you so much for the time. I have a little bit of time here for some closing remarks here, and I'll go to Kimberly for a closing.
Oh, I think Elfrey pointed out really well. Civic reflection is all about the process, right? People say, well, what is it comes out of it? Is there a video? Did you record it? But it's really about the process. It's the process of engaging in respectful and meaningful dialogue about really important civic matters. So yes, we'd love to have everyone participate.
All right, Elfrey, you want to jump in and closing?
Well, we were trained, Kim and I, back in 2009. So this process to civic reflections has kind of, they've tweaked it to make it better. Our other staff at the council, Nadine and Bernice, recently got trained. So when we were first trained, we brought a trainer to Guam so that we could train more people, right? And then the last go around, we sent our staff. The council is looking to bring a trainer next year. So we'll really have the opportunity to train more people in this very valuable tool, you know, that our community could avail of. So yeah, come visit our website and just see the types of programming that we do. And if you're specifically interested in our conversations and how we do them, you know, contact the staff and get involved, because we do great humanities
Yes, we
work in
do.
this on this island.
All right, guys. Thank you so much, Kimberly, Nadine, Elfrey. Thank you guys so much for the time. I know I wish we had all the time in the world on Zoom to just go ahead and chat, but you know, next time for sure I'll get you guys back on. We'll talk about the recaps of your the conversations and then what's next for Humanities Guahan. So again, thank you guys so much for joining me on the conversation here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Anytime. Thank you guys. All right. That pretty much concludes
Bye.
another episode of the One Micronesia Podcast. You guys continue to have a great one, and we'll see you at the next one.